It's that time of week. It's time for the countdown of the top 10 greatest championship matches in Royal Rumble history. We are up to number 3 this week. We've made it. Top 3 time. Cream of the crop right here. Last week, number 4 was Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit for the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble in 2003. Fantastic wrestling match. One of the best you'll ever see. This week, number 3 in the countdown is one of the best ladder matches in WWE history for the Intercontinental Championship. The champion, Chris Benoit, defending against the challenger, Chris Jericho, at the Royal Rumble in 2001. One of the 2 greatest Royal Rumble pay-per-views of all time. I think it's a toss-up between 2000 and 2001. Back-to-back years. That was a special time to be a fan. That period there. I look back sometimes on that whole period, whether it's the late 90s or 2000, 2001. And I kind of feel bad for all the newer fans who probably like WWE well enough, and they didn't grow up during that period, so they don't have that as a frame of reference to know how much better things were back then. But I feel bad, that they're going to grow up now. I feel like the cranky old man now, but they're going to grow up in a period of WWE. I'm not talking wrestling in general, but just WWE, thinking that this is hot shit, and they have no idea. They have no context for how much more exciting and how much better overall and just more fun, I think, anyway, things were back then. That was a special period, though, that 2000, 2001 period. A lot of great wrestling, a lot of great characters and comedy and everything just, not everything, but most things just seemed to click. They had a good roster back then. They had good writers, and it's one of those 2 Rumbles, I think, as one of the the best Rumble pay-per-views that they've ever done. The 2001 show had a very good WWE title match between Kurt Angle and Triple H. An outstanding ladder match that I'm going to get into here for the IC title, and one of the best Rumble matches, I think, in history that the company's ever done. So those of you who have been going back, as I've been doing this countdown, I know some of you at least have been going back and watching each of the matches that I mentioned, that I bring up. My suggestion would be, in this case, go back and watch the entire pay-per-view. I think overall you'll enjoy the 2001 Rumble. Jericho and Benoit had feuded throughout much of the previous year, after Benoit came into the company in February of 2000 as part of the Radicals. They were both part of the 3-way match of WrestleMania 16 with Kurt Angle, where the IC title and the European title both were on the line. I think it was Jericho won the European and didn't hold on to it very long. He might have actually lost it the next night. And Benoit won the Intercontinental, I believe. I remember thinking this is weird because the first fall of the match was for the Intercontinental title. And I thought, well, why would you do that? That's the more important of the 2 titles. It should be the European title. But I guess they didn't want to put that on Benoit, the European belt. So they just did it that way, where Jericho, I guess, would get the winning fall at the end, I believe. Unless I'm completely misremembering here. I think that's the order in which things went. But anyway, they were part of that match at WrestleMania that year. They had a match at Backlash in 2000, another one of the company's best pay-per-views. That was for the IC title. They wrestled again at Judgment Day, this time in a submission match. Best 2 out of 3 falls match at SummerSlam, which included the famous, in the build-up, the famous SmackDown promo by Jericho, where he did his best Dr. Seuss impersonation and said that he would fight Benoit anywhere. I'll fight you in the ring, I'll fight you in the back, I'll fight you in a boat, I'll fight you with a goat. Chris Benoit, when the score is tied, Chris Benoit as a blushing bride. And the whole time he's showing funny images of Benoit dressed, as a bride and with a goat and on a boat and all the... It's funnier if you watch it. That was back when SmackDown had the old Ovaltron. And so that's a lot of matches throughout the year 2000, off and on feud. And then culminating here in this match at the Royal Rumble, this was the blow-off to their feud. This really was a great wrestling match, I think, with a ladder thrown in and some chairs. The match never really slows down. They keep the pace up the entire time. They made great use of the ladder. They tried some innovative spots that we really hadn't seen before. And not for nothing, this is a pretty brutal match to watch. This got pretty violent with the ladder. These two did not hold back using that thing. There was one scary spot, especially in hindsight, where Jericho is outside the ring and he's got a chair in his hand. And Benoit comes flying through the ropes like a missile. And in doing so, he gets pasted right in the head by Jericho with the chair. Now, he got his hands up, but still, I mean, damn. Benoit also got smashed in the face at one point by the ladder. At another point, Jericho starts climbing up the ladder. Benoit stops him. And from the ladder, off the ladder, he back suplexes Jericho out over the top rope to the floor. These two guys are insane. Benoit performed the diving headbutt of doom, did so from the very top of the ladder. Not near the top, the very top. He fell forward. Of course, Jericho moved out of the way, and Benoit just rammed his head down into the floor. That's a long way down with a very hard landing. But the lasting iconic image from this match will forever be the submission spot from atop the ladder. This goes to that whole innovative use of the ladder thing I was talking about. Jericho has Benoit up on top of the ladder, right? I think Benoit had been climbing. Jericho met him up there. And Benoit falls backwards to where he's basically now laid out across the top of the ladder. His back is arched. He's hanging over. His back looks like it's being bent in half. Well, Jericho goes and hooks his legs on either side of the ladder. For what some people will say, oh, it's the walls of Jericho. Jim Ross called it an octopus or a modified version of an octopus. Call it whatever you want. I call it the walls. It made for an incredible visual of him putting Benoit in the walls of Jericho on the very top of the ladder. It is the highlight of the match. In the end, Jericho did pull down the championship to win, still selling the shoulder. He had been posted in that shoulder, I think the left shoulder, earlier in the match. Ref goes to raise his arm. Jericho winces. He uses the other arm instead. Arguably, Chris Jericho is the most decorated Intercontinental champion, I think, of all time. 9 Intercontinental titles. 10 total if you count the IWGP version that he won in New Japan. I half expect All Elite Wrestling to create their own Intercontinental title just so Jericho can win that one too. Just an incredible piece of business this is, and unfortunately, like last week's match with Benoit and Kurt Angle, not a match that will ever be talked about again on WWE television, on WWE DVDs, because of what happened with Benoit later in his life. He and Jericho just a few months later, in fact, that very same year, would go on to have one of the greatest Raw matches in history, where they won the tag team titles from Stone Cold and Triple H. And actually, the very next night, they had a TLC match that they taped for SmackDown that they won. Jericho would win the WCW title from The Rock later on that year, turned heel and became the only man to pin Stone Cold and The Rock in the same night, and becoming the undisputed champion at Vengeance. 2001 is one of the best, most eventful years in the career of Chris Jericho. And I would argue that 2019 may end up being number 2 right behind that one, the way things are shaping up. But it all began with this match here, early in 01, number 3 in our countdown. Now, next Sunday, I will reveal match number 2 on my list. And then the Sunday of this year's Royal Rumble, which is the 27th, I will reveal the greatest championship match in Royal Rumble history. So we just got a couple more weeks to go before we reveal what number 1 is. I know some of you think you already have it all figured out. And you might, or you may not. We'll see.